Today, inside the vault, Fred and I break down ways to apply this week's virtue as believers, husbands, fathers, and friends. Whoever you are and wherever you are, we're glad you made it. Are you ready? Let's get back to good. Man, I really hope that y'all didn't miss the conversation with Chris last week on Vision, because that was fantastic. Go back and check it out. But Fred, it's so good to see you again, man. It has been a long couple of weeks. I mean, I ain't gonna lie, I'm tired, boss. How you doing? You good? You hanging in?
I'm here. Look, I'm still hanging. As long as I keep hanging, I'll be all right. Don't let go. That's the whole point.
Hold fast and stand firm. That applies to so much in life. We've been sort of laughing our tails off before we turn this on. So welcome back to good. That was a long intro. Welcome back.
Yeah.
Man, we were chatting a little bit off camera, but before we dive into today's framework of discipleship for Vision, just like what you got on the heart, what we've been chatting about a little bit. Go ahead and click off save for a second, man. How's life?
It's here's the thing. We didn't talk about this part, but I will tell you, because I was thinking more about, I love what you usually start with, what am I thankful for? And I will say this week has been I'm gonna joke a little bit, the week of the surprise. I feel like there have been multiple, not gotchas, don't think of it that way, but just think of things that have happened that I wasn't expecting, professionally and personally.
Yeah.
And some of it, I think, is God's way. It's almost like the pruning of any tree, right? There's always got to be that cutting and that sculpting. And just when you think you're in a place of consistency and routine, there's a surprise that happens. And it comes in, and I think the immediate reaction is for you to think either something you haven't done or something you're doing is wrong. And what I've learned this week in every situation that's come up is that a lot of it is about development. Like for me, it has been the spontaneity of having to adjust quickly.
Right.
Professionally, I've had some tough conversations that I've had to have this week with some people, and I wasn't expecting that. There have been some personal conversations I've had to have with people this week. I wasn't expecting that. And I think, again, a lot of it for me was more reflective on, hey, Fred, God's got you. As much as I like the control, and I feel like you and I have very similar personalities. And it kind of goes into what we were laughing about a little bit about life, right? A lot of stuff is happening that has been very surprising.
Hey, y'all, some people losing their minds these days. This world's going a little bit crazy. Let's just be real. What?
Right?
What?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I am learning more and more not to be afraid of the unexpected. And I think because I've had and I really enjoyed Chris last week. I did listen. I think we all have these stories of the great points, the high points, the low points, the points of what we consider success, which I'm learning to redefine success too. That's a whole nother thing we can talk about another time.
Preach.
But even in these moments of tension and the moments when things are surprises, right? To learn, it's a part of the journey. It's a part of what we need to develop. And as I tell my kids, it's preparing us for the next stage. If you don't learn the lesson now, or if you don't pass the test, you're going to continue to repeat the test. So for me, letting go of feeling the need to control, and it's not even trying to control the people, it's myself. I like routine. You've known me for a long time. I like routine. I like schedules. I like plans. I like knowing what I'm doing. And when that gets, interrupted, it can throw me off. But I've learned God is sometimes in the interruption. So that's what's been going on with me, man. Is just learning to embrace the surprises, the interruptions when things don't necessarily go as I expected, and being free. Oh my gosh, dude. Being free to listen to him as he is speaking to me in the situation. Like there's one thing to prepare for something. It's something else when you're in the situation, you're not prepared for it, and now you have to depend on him to tell you what you need to do and say. So it goes back to our last week's message on discernment, right?
Yep.
Even discernment, having the clarity to hear and knowing what to say and what not to say, because I think I mentioned this last week too, right?
Yep.
Sometimes discernment isn't always about you then opening or saying what you've heard. Sometimes it's just for you. But
Right.
sometimes, man, it's happening in the moment.
Right.
And that can be uncomfortable, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, man.
Yeah. That's good. We're always gonna do our best to start with this because in the other series, off the hinges, we start with asking the guests, "What are you thankful for? What are you learning? How do you hope to grow or transform as you rest and recover?" And I like those questions here as well, but it's always going to take more of a faith-based discipleship mindset. So maybe more of a thanks. Yeah, that's always the posture. And
Yeah.
everything you give thanks. It's the will of the Father and Christ Jesus for you. Enter into His courts with thanksgiving, or into His gates with thanksgiving, and into His courts with praise. So I think it's just the posture of thanks actually precedes everything we do. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of research that's gone into gratitude, and it's
Yeah.
proven true because it's a natural law that God has established. So of course you're going to find endless empirical research to support gratitude, and God's like, God sort of told
Yeah.
you so. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
good you research it, but I don't need your research to make it so. Just do the thing. Like
Right.
you don't need some highfalutin degree to just tell you that it's the right posture. So thanks is really important. And then the learning, I think in this, the whole purpose of this episode in this series to me is it's learning, but it's a little bit more about trying to be attentive to what God is trying to teach me.
Yeah.
Maybe not what I've necessarily learned. And
Yeah.
there's actually a difference. I hope I learn it. But I think there are so many things God is trying to teach me and mold my heart and mind into
Yeah.
that without the Spirit, I can't learn it on my own understanding. I definitely can't. And a lot of things I'm actually unaware of what's even going on.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of time and reflection and staying in tune with Him to really uncover and unearth that.
Yeah.
So, and then finally, growing and transforming. That's just transforming the mind and literally being transformed daily into the image of Christ. So I think that question from a spiritual discipleship standpoint is I should actually look a lot different almost every time we are encountering each other
Yeah.
if I'm really getting after what I should be getting after. Maybe
Yeah.
it's not always visible, but there should be little things all the time. It's like,
Yeah.
man, that's good. And I
Yeah.
think I appreciate that we try to encourage each other in that too. Like, oh man, that's great. Things come more naturally. These
Yeah.
conversations become more fluid. Even
Yeah.
just pursuing this calling that God's pressed onto us, like
Yeah.
the little things are all a package deal of what we're thankful for. I think what we're being taught, maybe more
Yeah.
than what we always learn.
Yeah.
And then just that posture of wanting to be transformed into his image more so than what we expect we should be shooting for.
Yeah.
But I will say, man, what am I thankful for? Like I said, y'all, it's a little bit crazy right now. And I think everybody agrees. And I would say this age isn't probably any different than a lot of times in the world. We just have a quick access to everything
Yeah.
because people have always been broken. Sin's always been all over the place.
Yeah.
And there's been some gnarly times in the history of humanity. Just go read a book. But it is very real and present and tangible to us now. So this is what matters. So you can't turn away from it and look the other way.
Yeah.
And I'll just give you a couple. They're sort of funny examples to me, and they're equally funny and frustrating. So first of all, let's take when there was the big Four Nations like hockey tournament that happened, sort of like a break from the NHL. And man, and this is probably going to rile people up, but you know what? I don't care. I kick the hornet's nest because some of y'all are ridiculous. It's a sport. And one thing I'm thankful for, to be very blunt and honest, is that Jesus is not a condoner or a proponent of any earthly nation or sports team or political stance and I know I'm going to get people that are going to try and clap back at me biblically, but he is a savior and a Lord for all who are willing to repent and come to him. So it's biblical. He's not a respecter of persons. So maybe we shouldn't be. And this is where it plays out, man. Like, of course, I enjoy watching sports on occasion. I don't have much time for it.
Yeah.
But if you tell me, oh, there was a hockey game and there was a fight, okay, well, my dad grew up playing hockey outside Detroit. I grew up playing pro rugby. I enjoy some aggressive sports. There's nothing wrong with wanting to get into it, let some aggression out, competitive nature, maybe a brawl. Right on. That's okay. Um, but it was really volatile. And people were like, and I've worked with Canadians, and people were like, "Oh, what you gonna say something to them after they booed you, and then you know, mop the floor with them?" I said, "After I did that, I did none of that. I wasn't on the ice, first of all, and also it's a game, man. Like, I'm not saying there aren't like national pride that follows along with some of those things, but man, y'all are like way too into something that doesn't matter that much. It's a sport, and then, you know, you flip it to the final match where Canada won, and then people are like, "Oh yeah," you walk in the door, and people at work are like, "Ah, F you, American." I'm like, "Whoa, man." Y'all like military officers. You lost your mind and good people. And it's y'all just stop being crazy is what I'm trying to say. Y'all losing your minds. Like, is it really that important to sever relationships or cause friction and animosity over something? First of all, it's not your team. You ain't playing on it. Like that goes down to like old Southern college football. Like, you see my boys beat your boys. I'm like, boys, you know any of them? I mean, it's crazy, man. So that in context, it's comical and it's also sad to me because it
Yeah.
actually it impacts the way we perceive and receive other people relationally.
Yeah.
And in a world where division is just everywhere at
Yeah.
every turn, can we just stop for a
Yeah.
second? And oh my goodness, welcome back to good. So what we're going to do today, maybe that's a good framework for it, is it's just like, man, Fred and I need a break from that trash. And hopefully this is a break from that to you. It's two brothers seeing what God says about a topic, sharing stories about it. And that's what we're going to do today with Vision. So I loved Chris's definition. It was really simple. So he said, vision is a picture of the future, and leadership is taking people to that picture of the future that they would not and could not go on their own. And man, that's a really nice way to package it. But I'll say this, it's not just about a picture. And of course, Chris would agree with this. There's a lot of layers to it. So to me, vision's a lot about it's about a lot of things: discerning, positioning, maybe acting, enduring. So we're going to use some biblical passages today, and I'm going to give sort of like the taglines, the headlines, and a verse to go with it. And that'll be sort of how Fred and I navigate this. So we're going to look through the lens of relationship, getting after who or what is guiding the vision, the posture for vision, like how you're positioning yourself to receive it, the appointment, when and where is that vision revealed, the response, because it is a choice. Like, what do you do when you see it? And then the challenge, like, what resistance are you going to face? And I think each of those is really critical to live, lead, and walk in a vision that's intended for you by God. So before we jump into this first one, what thoughts you got on vision, man? If I was just going to say, like, give you a quick 60-second Fred plug for how you view this topic.
Clarity and sight.
Mm,
I think they're not always happening simultaneously, but I think both at some point are required.
yeah.
Um, because sometimes God can show you things and you not understand it, and it's not meant for you to understand now. So you have sight of it, but you don't have the clarity. And
Mm-hmm.
then sometimes you have the clarity behind it, but you don't know what it looks like.
Right.
So for me, oftentimes, when I think of vision, and I will say that again, I don't even think it's just a spiritual and religious thing. When I
No.
think about as a leader of a team,
Right.
um, by being the owner of the vision, to your point, it's me providing that clarity and sight to the rest of my team of where we're going. We like
Mm-hmm.
to call it North Star, right?
Yep.
Um, and I think a lot of times there are a lot of people, a lot of people have a great vision, but they don't know how to get there.
Yeah.
And I think that's the part where the discernment comes in, that all of these things that we've been talking about, and I know you've probably been talking about for the past couple of weeks, come into play. That they're not independent. They actually work hand in hand, and you have
Mm-hmm.
to collectively look at all of these different pieces in order to really understand what God is doing.
Right.
I think missing out on any of this, man, is probably a negative thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you notice, like, sort of the buckets that we drop into, a vision is a vision until it's fulfilled. So like
Yeah,
once it's achieved or comes to fruition, like, it's no longer a vision, it's a fact.
right.
So when you go, maybe it seemed open ended that we're talking about an appointment, a response, and a challenge, and you're like, well, what are you going to talk about once you arrive there at
Yeah,
that proverbial promised land? Well, it's not a vision anymore. It's not a hope for the future. It's not a faith in
Right.
things to come. So there's a lot of investment that you don't know the return on that investment yet
Yeah.
because it's a vision. So
Yeah.
it is laced with uncertainty, maybe novelty,
Yeah.
some angst, some I don't really know what's happening.
Right.
That is vision. So it's if you can put your hands on it, it's not a vision. It's just a task. And so I think there's a lot of delineation where even organizationally people get confused and they
Yeah.
write vision statements that are like, you could knock this out today.
Right.
So it doesn't need to be
Not good.
so philosophical that it's not achievable,
Right.
but also appreciate the difference in like a to-do list and a vision. Man, there's
Yeah.
different lanes there, different swim
Yes.
lanes.
Completely agree, man. Completely agree.
But for relationship, who or what is guiding the vision? So this is a really simple verse that stood out to me, and it's in John 15:5. And it says, I'm the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me, and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. And I think just as a follower of Christ, and those are his words, it's really important when you go like, it starts with this relationship of like, where am I getting this vision from, right? Who's the voice that I'm listening to? Because you can get a vision or you can get input and you can get an idea of the future that might not be the right picture. So that gardening picture is so powerful to me. Like you're planting fruit, maybe you're gardening for a harvest in the future that you can't see yet, but the only way you're going to get that fruit is by abiding in him. So how does that, like whether it comes to personal experience or just through what you've gone through with establishing or pursuing a vision, how does that verse or that context relate to you?
It's interesting. I can't take credit for this. A church that I used to attend in Atlanta, the pastor there actually used that reference that you just talked about, planting a garden.
Mm.
And he referred to the packaging on seeds, that the vision is what you see on the outside of that package, but you don't have it until the steps are completed. So you
Right.
know what it looks like, but it could take months, maybe years, depending on what you're planning before you actually see it come to fruition. Um, you know, I'm not going to pat myself on the back by any means, but I will say I feel like, and most people who know me and have known me a long time, I have had a pretty strong opinion on God's prominence in my life and the
Mm-hmm.
need to always have him involved. And I know I'm probably going to not get any great points for this one, but I will say it. As a kid, I was that kid who prayed over, God help me get a good grade on this test, or help me get invited to the party, or help me be able
Yeah.
to date X girl, whatever the
God,
situation
please
was.
don't let
I
me
was
ride. Don't let me ride the pine in this game. I know you want me to be playing.
well, whatever it
Come on.
was, man. Yeah, right? Yeah, but basically,
Let's be real.
whatever it was, I knew prayer. And again, I don't look at prayer as a one-way thing. I think you talked about this a little bit last week too, right? It's a conversation. It goes
Sure.
both ways. But I've always understood the need of connection.
Mm-hmm.
I've never was a strong word. Um, Infrequently doubted the need for me to be connected to God as my source
Right.
in order for me to move in the direction of which I believe I needed to go. Not always knowing what direction that was, but I knew I needed him to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that from a very, very early age. And I think it allowed me, good and bad, to avoid a lot of things that probably kids, teenagers, young adults may have gone through, because I feel like I had that bit of insight, discernment, that allowed me to avoid some of the foolish things in life. Not trying to say I didn't make stupid decisions. That's not what I'm saying at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what I will say, I was very much so in tune at a very early age into what was right, what was wrong, in accordance to the word. Let me be clear
Mm-hmm.
about that too, because I know that could be subjective. In accordance
Right.
to what we believe as faith believers. And I feel like that is what's been the consistent string throughout my life. It doesn't mean I always get it right. It doesn't mean I
Right.
always obey. But what I will tell you, I always knew who to go to first. I always knew where to start. When I didn't know what to do, when I couldn't figure out what the next step was, when I couldn't discern who I should be and who I should be around and what career path and what job I should take, who I should marry, should we have children? I mean,
Those are big
all of
ones.
yeah, I'm saying, right? But it's the
Hey,
small stuff too, right? We
it
talk
is.
about the big stuff, but man, to me, it goes beyond that because I feel like it's like anything else. You get your sea legs. I know that's probably not the best term, but you get your sea legs sometimes in the small stuff.
Hmm.
It's the little things that, and you hear God, and I'll even tell you, even down to, and I know some folks will laugh at this, what to wear. I can't tell you the number of times God will say, grab the umbrella or get a hat, grab that extra coat, and I'll
Hmm.
go out and it's freezing, or the meteorologist didn't say it was going to rain and it rains, right? Just stuff that you're like, oh, God's not in all that. But it's something about attuning your ear and putting him first that it starts, it should be the initiator of everything. So
Yeah.
before you even get to a point where you're trying to walk the vision, you got to have the connection. So I
Hmm.
completely align to understanding that as long as you are connected to the vine, there's always going to be that connection and flow. I also like the same minister from the church that I was talking about, always talked about God's always speaking. It's like a faucet. He's always speaking. The question is, are we aligned and are we listening?
Hmm.
So, that's my perspective.
Yeah.
What you got?
Yeah, it's very true. And as you're saying, he's always speaking. And I think so. There's a perspective which I agree with, where people will say, well, it's if it's already in his word, maybe he doesn't need to repeat himself. That's nice. But I also think that there are times where, yes, he might have explicitly told us something in his word, but he also knows the heart, and he
Yeah,
knows our own capacity and our own limitations and our own current position. So if he knows, because he knows everything, so he does, if he knows that you haven't read that thing that he wrote to you and he told you in written form through scripture, he's not going to be up in heaven, crosses his arm, chuckling, going, yo, this sucker doesn't even know how to wrote to him. I told you already. Figure it out. Maybe
right.
once you uncover it, then I'll help you. Like,
Yeah.
where's Waldo? And Waldo's the verse that I buried in 66 books to you.
Go
Right. So, I
find.
mean, I appreciate that. Yes, we do need to be diligent about studying and seeking his instruction.
Yeah,
And so don't misinterpret that, please. But also, I believe that he's a good father.
yeah,
So if I'm coming to him for something that, yes, maybe technically he has already told all of us,
yeah,
he will still graciously reveal it.
yeah,
And actually, there have been times where I've been wanting to hear his perspective, and his spirit does guide me into the right spot in his word.
yeah,
So
yeah,
actually, I think that is the quickest on ramp to hearing his voice
yeah,
is prayerfully just trying to study things through a specific focus or lens or desire or pursuit.
yeah,
Um, because it does give you the proper optic to say, okay, now I'm really trying to get clarity on this, or I need to know direction on this, or I need to know what. And then I think he does use his word, but he's not also going to like rope a dope you and try and play, guess who. So I
yeah,
just think it's silly. I do agree that we need to stay diligent in the word, but he's such a good, patient dad
yeah.
that when he knows you are really trying to get after what he's told you to do, he's not going to play tricks on you. That's not who he is.
Not
So
at
I
all.
think just that's a misnomer. That's not biblical. If people think that, show it to me because you can't.
Yeah,
You
right.
can't. I'm sorry. I've done this for a long time and I've followed him for a long time and I grew up around this stuff. You ain't going to find it. Maybe you misinterpret it that way, but you ain't
Yeah,
going to find where God tricked his children that
yeah,
he loved. That's just crazy talk.
yeah,
So I think, but I do believe that if we don't abide in him, then we won't. And that abiding in him is holistically, not just in the things that are comfortable, but like, are we actually sacrificing, dying to self, doing the things he's demanded us to be doing as we follow him and
yeah,
love others? Um, so there are things that we can do that can clog that pipe of communication.
yeah,
And then until that's restored, we won't have clarity
yeah.
because there is something to be said for a repentant person that I'm not saying a non-believer. I'm talking about a Christian who just isn't in good standing with their dad.
Yeah.
And until that bridge is gapped, I mean, you're not going to be getting what you need out of that. So I think that's also a really important thing. It's the relationship is everything.
Yeah.
Who that vision's coming from, and what are you doing to establish that open line of communication with your dad to receive it when you need it? Because he's got it for you. And that's your whole purpose, is to accomplish his vision for you, because you were made with that purpose. So I think that was sort of why I think we started on that, because that's that relational aspect to vision is everything.
Yeah.
And you can also, on the flip side of that coin, actually probably just a whole nother bag of coins, enter Judas Iscariot. You can get your vision or direction from something that isn't ordained.
Absolutely.
So I just think it's yeah, the posture though, how you're positioning yourself to receive it. I'm going to read two really quick passages, but we'll probably land a little bit longer on the second one, because it's powerful, especially if you're a young man. I think this one's dialed in for you. But the first one was in Habakkuk 2:1-3. And I opened this up when I shared the intro with Laura to Vision. So Habakkuk is taking complaints to the Lord. And he's a prophet. And he says, I'll take my stand at the watchpost, station myself on the tower, and look out to see what he will say to me, what God's going to say to him. Because he took some complaints to God. He's like, God, what's up? I need answers on stuff, and I'm not digging it. I'm not digging what's going on right now. He goes, and what I will answer concerning my complaint. And the Lord answered me, write the vision, make it plain on tablets, so he may run who reads it. For still the vision awaits its appointed time. It hastens to the end. It will not lie. If it seems slow, wait for it. It will surely come. It will not delay. So this posture of Habakkuk is making complaints to the Lord. He's being real and raw. He's like, I don't like what's going on. I expect an answer from you. You need to tell us what's going on in your vision for this. He said, I'm going to wait. I'm going to be at my watch post on my tower, and I'm just sort of bated breath. What you got? Give it to me. And God answers. And God's answer is like, wait, because it's coming, but you better be ready. So his posture was, it was a little bit aggressive. It was a little bit real. Like, I need this. So he took it honestly to God. He threw his complaints and his cares and his worries at the feet of his Lord and said, I'm expecting something here, and I'm not going anywhere until I get it. And God gave it to him. So I think there's something just tangible about that. Like, that's not a irreverence towards God, but I think people don't know sometimes, especially maybe young Christians, how to navigate this space of really taking your heart to God. He knows it anyway. So who are you trying to fool? Like, if you got a problem, just like, especially these days, there's a lot weighing on people, man.
Yeah.
And it's hard to sift through that to see, God, what do you want from me? And if that's what you want, I think it's okay to be raw with him. He knows it. He expects it. But the second one in Samuel, and this shouldn't be a new story to a lot of people, especially if they've read their Bible or heard some of these old stories. But Samuel, when he was a young boy, and Samuel is just a powerful prophet of God who was really influential with King David and a lot of just like shaping Israel as a young nation. But Samuel, when he was a boy, and go back and read some of his story, it's really impressive and powerful. But in 1 Samuel 3:1-10, this is such a cool story. And it's about the Lord calling Samuel. So it says, now the boy Samuel was ministering to the Lord in the presence of Eli. And the word of the Lord, or his vision, was rare in those days. There was no frequent vision. So this is a time where like you didn't hear much from God. And God says that in his word. And there wasn't a frequent vision. So people were a little bit confused and didn't know direction. At that time, Eli, whose eyesight had begun to grow dim so that he couldn't see, was lying down in his own place. The lamp of God hadn't gone out yet, and Samuel was lying down in the temple of the Lord, where the ark of God was. Then the Lord called Samuel, and he said, here I am, and ran to Eli. So it's this kid in the middle of the night. Here's someone calling, like, Samuel, Samuel. He's like, here I am. And he runs to the guys, sort of working for. And he goes, I'm here. And he goes, I didn't call. Lie down again. So he went and he lays down. And it happens again. The Lord calls him, Samuel. Samuel arose and went to Eli. Here I am. He called me. He goes, I didn't call you, my son. Lie down again. So, and this sounds like my kids coming like, Dad, I got to go potty. And then I take them. And my 2-year-old who's potty trained in the 2 a.m. goes, I don't have to go. It's what this reminds me of. And it says, Samuel did not yet know the Lord, and the word of the Lord had not yet been revealed to him. So this, in the vein of discipleship, is such a powerful passage with revealing vision and the people you surround yourself with in your posture. It goes, the Lord called Samuel again the third time. He arose, went to Eli, and said, here I am, for you called me. And I can just sense in the story, this dude's like pissed off at this point, man. This kid's like, dude, stop calling me. I want to
Yeah.
sleep. And he's like, dude, I didn't call you. Go to bed.
Yeah.
Eli perceived that the Lord was calling the boy. So it took some experienced insight
Yep.
and discernment in this posture. And he goes, all right, here I am, for you call me. Eli perceives it and goes, go lie down. And if he calls you again, you shall say, speak, Lord, for your servant hears. So Samuel went and lay down in his place. And this is interesting because the first couple iterations, it says the Lord spoke. And this time it's different. It says, and the Lord came and stood. And I don't even know what that looked like, visibly or physically, but that's a different description.
Yeah.
So once the mentor, the one who is guiding and discipling this young boy, gave him insight on what he needed to do, God physically showed up in that space and said, Samuel. And he said, speak, for your servant hears. And the Lord said to Samuel, to the kid, not even to the old man, said to the little boy, behold, I'm about to do a thing. Hey, man, when it comes to vision, that thing is laced. So I'm just going to say over to you, because that sort of gave me chills when I was reading that. So what you got for that one?
That's a lot, man.
Yo.
A couple of things hit my mind. Actively waiting, patiently listening. And I think we sometimes think posture or waiting on the Lord means that we're not doing anything. I have come to understand from my personal experience that waiting means just doing the last thing he told you to do, being where he told you to be last, being committed to what he last told you to do is how I see waiting. I do think, though, in the midst of you actively waiting, you do have to have your ear very much so in tune to listening to the next or for the next instruction. Because I do believe in the midst of you actively waiting, he will give you the next instruction. I can name so many times in my life, let's just go there for a second, marriage. I got married a little bit later in life. I was in my mid-30s. And I'm going to be honest, I'd gotten to a point where I was very comfortable being single. And I was enjoying life. I liked where I was spiritually, physically. I was in great health. Financially, things were good. And I had kind of resolved that, okay, I'm not getting married. This is not what I'm doing. And as soon as after I resolved that in my head, all of a sudden, my wife shows up. And there's a whole long story with that because clearly she never went away. I've known her since I was 5, but that's a whole nother story for another day. But the same thing has also happened with jobs. As soon as I've gotten comfortable with a certain role, another role pops up. Moving, I left New York and moved to Atlanta, and it took me quite a few years to adjust. And I was like, okay, I'm good. We're going to stay in Atlanta. This is where my kids were born. I got married here. We're good. And a couple of months later, oh no, you're moving to North Carolina. So I have learned, when I look back over my life, again, actively doing whatever it was he has told me to do during that time of seeing the vision and the vision manifesting is number one, but also having your ear attuned to hearing his voice is critical. And I think that's really what was happening with Samuel, is that he was learning to hear from God. That is stage one, as we talked about, even to the relationship or, who's guiding the vision. You're going to have to get constant instruction. It's not going to be just one piece of instruction. That's the great and the awesomeness, if I can use that, of God is he never shows you the full thing, right? You're always going to get it in pieces, and you're going to get just enough of what you can do for now, whatever he's giving you the ability to do. And that's something else I've learned, right? You always have what you need for that season. And that's why your ear has to be in tune for the next season to get the next instruction to understand what you need to take into the next season. So
Hmm.
again, it's something about the actively waiting, whatever skill he's developing, whatever situation he has you in. I think that's half of it. But then the other half, man, I do believe it's the listening. And I think when the two align and when you have reached whatever point that God says he or she now knows and has learned this lesson, he then gives you that next piece of the vision and
Yep.
moves you forward. So that's my
Yeah.
thoughts, man.
Yeah. I cut that verse short too a little bit when the Lord finally responded to Samuel. But like, hey, I'm just going to encourage you, just go read that story because it's wild. Because, I mean, I know you know this, but he says, I'm about to do a thing in Israel at which the two ears of everyone who hears it will tingle. And so basically what's happening is God's about to mic drop on Eli some stuff that's been going down in his own family.
Yeah.
And it's wild. Like the
Yeah.
story's insane, man.
Yeah.
And the fact that God is revealing the vision of what's going to happen through this kid.
Yeah.
And he's like, yo, I ain't even telling your mentor over here what's
Right.
happening. I'm coming to you. So that whole story has, I won't even unpack all of the applications that it could have and that it has had on my life. What I would say to young people, and if you're an older person, hear this through the other end of the filter as well, is don't let anyone despise your youth.
Yeah.
That's biblical. Be an example of the believers in word and conduct and conversation, right? Like that's a biblical charge. It's just if you're young and you follow Christ, don't let people be picking at you just because you're young. And young, that's actually hit me a lot differently sometimes. It does to me, that doesn't always mean contextually um young in age. Like youth, you can have youth in a lot of different perspectives, maybe within a certain occupation. You could be maybe a little bit more novice or green in a certain pipeline that you're in. So I think there's always this, you know, people take this idea of age, tenure, the mentor to the mentee, and there's a lot of these layers that we throw on humanity. God's
Yeah.
stripping that down and he's going like, don't let anybody despise that or come over top of you with that. If you're doing what I'm telling you to do, you're exactly where you need to be. Keep on doing it. And then if you're an older person or you're more wise or in your years or developed in a certain thing or pursuit, don't ever despise young people. Like, be that person like Eli that actually tries to discern and use your experience to help navigate those confusing things to someone who it said God hadn't even made himself known to this kid yet. And he's sitting here looking at Eli, probably going like, you going to do your job here or what? You going to tell this kid to go like, get out of here? Or are you going to actually like eventually pay attention that it's not you and I'm doing a thing? So I really appreciate in that story how even the posture of the one who is there trying to disciple the other one, he had to be tuned in for the other one to actually get the proper word. So that that relationship was everything. And
Yeah.
if and don't be so haughty and arrogant to think that the word's always going to be coming through you, man, because you never know. You never know.
Absolutely.
And there's so many stories of that. If you look at back at the nation of Israel or through scripture of how God revealed something powerful to the young people that were in the midst.
Yep.
And I just think that's really important to highlight that posture in making our young people is we're dads, both of three little girls, teaching them. I love that you said that when you were a kid, you would pray over everything. That's habits of thought and habits of action. Even if some of it might seem comical now, you were growing that muscle, man.
Absolutely.
So like I do my best to never judge or criticize
Yeah.
or play down when my little girls want to pray over something or talk about something spiritual because they're learning and it's beautiful. So
Yeah.
don't squander that moment is what I would encourage people because it's there and you have such a cool role in that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that story is powerful.
Let me throw
Um,
another point there. You were saying something if you don't mind.
yeah, of course.
I think something else though that people miss that Samuel did, I completely agree. Older people don't despise younger people, that the gift can be used through them. Younger people don't despise older people because they still have a level of wisdom.
Right.
But just to think that Samuel was humble enough to go to a person who had wisdom. There's
Hmm.
something also to be said about that,
Right.
that young people, as you seek people to whom you should be surrounded by, seeking godly wisdom is okay, because
Yep.
godly wisdom can lead you even closer to God, especially if you haven't developed your ear to a point where you know how to hear things directly. And I think
Right.
there's something to be said about that, that he was at least smart enough. He didn't just wake up and run to anyone. He ran to who he knew could help him
Right.
in a godly way. And I think there's something to be said about that, even for this generation that both of us are raising. That
Hmm.
let's not despise the wisdom of people who have experience. I like how you said that. It may not necessarily be attached to age, but it's something about wisdom of experience of someone who's done something ahead of you.
Right.
It's okay to seek them if you know that you haven't developed that ear or that level of maturity
Hmm.
yet, that hopefully they will guide you or help you along that path. So I just think that's interesting as well, man.
Yeah. I've said it before. It's a way that it was told to me and it sort of resonates like down this trail or this path of life. And I think there's three buckets of people that we should always maintain: someone that's in front of us that we're following, someone that's alongside of us that can help sort of shoulder that load with us, and they're in that same walk of life, and then someone that we're leading. So it's
Like
before,
that.
behind, beside, and behind us, if you
Yeah.
want to alliterate it. But you are in that pipeline some way,
Yeah.
somehow, and you need to find people in each of those groups because developmentally it's so helpful. And this
Yeah.
isn't just spiritually speaking, this is just
Yeah.
applicable to life
Yeah.
in any pursuit. But also making sure that you're not forgetting that even though you're in that position, other people are looking to you and you might be in one of those
Yes.
buckets with them.
Yes.
And I think you can be going forward and looking in the rearview mirror and learning from each of those groups. And it's such a flow and an ebb and a flow of that relationship. So I just think it's really important from a mentoring or discipling mindset that you had better have. I would say I would really recommend 2 to 3 in each of those groups that are tight.
Mm.
So like 2 to 3 people that you are looking at that are ahead of you. So you
Yeah.
can get an informed counsel
Yes.
that has more experience. Two to
Yeah.
three that are tight with you, man. That's the tight group.
Yes.
And then maybe 2 to 3 that you're helping develop,
Yeah.
because also it just enriches and deepens and broadens your exposure and your experience in
Yeah.
humanity and in this
Yeah.
fun journey. So I just
Yes.
think this story, I mean, this is deep, man, but this story of Samuel with Eli and how God showed up, physically
Mhm.
showed up into the space. So now you've
Yeah.
got, 3 people, 3 bodies in this space because of this one interaction of vision. And all of them are along this pipeline in different buckets. And that just popped out to me that it's for vision to really be revealed and fulfilled, you have to have that, I guess, sort of like discipleship train going of those different buckets.
Yeah.
And it's a cool way to break it down in my mind visually. Like, and it's a challenge. Like, who could I physically name people right now that are in each of those? And
Yeah.
if I can't, what am I
That's
doing to
good.
get it?
Yeah.
It's
That's
tough,
the
man.
point. Yeah.
So get you
And they
someone
change
in
different
each of them.
stages of life too, right?
Yeah, and exactly. And be smart to realize, be smart
Yeah.
to realize when you've grown up and matured off the milk and into the meat and when you ain't in that certain group anymore.
Yeah.
And be humble enough to realize when you are now someone's guide.
Right.
And
Right.
that's not something you
Huge.
take with
Lightly.
arrogance. That's a
Yeah.
heavy load to bear.
Yeah.
So just I think you got to take that gracefully, and that
Yeah.
drives you to more of a posture of being humble and
Yeah.
seeking guidance from God. So
Yes.
yeah, the next one, the third one of that we said we would discuss here is appointment. So when and where the vision is revealed. And there's a couple short passages that I'll read. And then I want to hear your thoughts because I've got such a different perspective I think than most people are going to hear on appointment. But I
Yeah.
want to hear your thoughts first. So in Ecclesiastes 3:1, it says, "For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven." And this tethers into other things, but just hear that in whatever context it speaks to you. In Galatians 4:4-5, it says, "But when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth his son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those who are under the law, so that we might receive adoption as sons." And then the final one I pulled the thread on for this was Matthew 24:36. And Jesus is saying, but concerning that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father only. And this is talking about a day that we all have hope for and a vision for the future of when Christ returns to claim his bride. So you can look at, there's a season for everything. And then when Christ came to earth the first time, even that said, it took the fullness of time. So that's what Galatians is telling us. Like, God didn't do it when people expected. He did it when his time clock, whatever that may mean. I mean, I know he's outside of time, but the fullness of time as he perceives it was there. And then he said, now. And when we look forward into the future, in Matthew, it's saying, like, God the Son doesn't even know when the Father's going to say, yo, go. And I ain't going to lie, before we dialed on, I mean, down south, people will be like, y'all come back now, you hear? And with the craziness that y'all are doing in this world, and we're part of it too, but man, with some of this, with some of the banana stuff that's been going on everywhere, and Fred and I were like, man, God, hey, y'all come back now, you hear? Like, are you paying attention to what's up? I think the fullness of time has come, God. And I don't know if you were awake up there or if you turn that rest on the Sabbath, the seventh day, into like a 7,000-year slumber, but what's up? But seriously, with appointment for vision, how does that land on you? What are your thoughts?
This is what I struggle with all the time. I'm just gonna be honest.
Yeah.
Woo, every area of my life, every area. Again, I don't know if naturally is the right word. I think I have developed a personality. Let me say it that way. I have developed a personality of order and structure and planning. And I often is as much as I know that God's timing is already perfect. And I think that's what I have to remind myself of. Even when I think something should be happening now, or I should be moving in a new direction now, or I should be in a different place now. If I was supposed to be there, I would be there. And that's something that I have had to sit with constantly at every phase of my life to go, if I was supposed to be there, I would have been there. Or because I'm here, I'm supposed to be here. That's another one, right? It's always, even sometimes where you are currently, it's not even the future. The appointed time could be right now. The moment that we're in today. I think the date's the 22nd, right? The time that we're in right now is an appointed time. And I think a lot of times we're always thinking about the future. Again, my personality forces me often to think about the future and not to think about this moment. But this is a moment that has been appointed. Oh, this is the day that the Lord hath made.
Oh, rejoice and be glad in it.
This is the day that the Lord hath made. And I was telling somebody the other day, and again, don't joke me because of this. You know, I'm at a place in my life. Look, I'm able to afford better clothes now. Call it what you want to call it. But
I ain't joking on you.
Right, but to be able to have a suit, for those of you who, if you've ever had the ability to have a custom-made suit, you will never want to buy an off-the-rack suit again.
Yeah.
I would tell you, even though I still will go back and forth between, but it's something about a suit that is made for you. No one else can put on that suit and it will look the same way because it has been made for you. So every time I hear that verse about this is the day that the Lord hath made, for me, it means this day was made for me. I have all that I need. I have all the wisdom. I have the resources. I have the understanding. I have the clarity. It's an appointed time. This moment, not 5 years from now, not a day from now, not an hour from now. This moment, Fred, what are you doing with it?
Yo, I'm gonna inject something there too, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Come on.
Because that's such a powerful, that's such a powerful thought. And if you unpack that scripturally, and I don't chapter verse me on any of this because I don't know the chapter verse off the top of my head. Chris Payne, maybe we need to dial him up and get him on a 3-way call right now because he could spit it at me. I ain't as good as he is. He does this for a day living. Come on. No excuses. They're incompatible with excellence. I just don't know all the verses, all right? But real talk, man, if you look at that concept
Yeah.
and all of its scriptural, this is the day the Lord's made. And then the two things in the two passages of scripture that sort of just popped into my mind with that is the Lord's Prayer. And some of y'all may know where I'm going with this, but I'm going to give you a quick context. The Lord's Prayer, and then the children of Israel wandering in the desert when they were given manna every morning. So the Lord's Prayer, which is the model of how we should pray in a posture of receiving guidance from the Father. And he says, give us this day our daily bread.
Yes.
And what does that mean when Christ shared that prayer to people who grew up knowing their history in the nation of Israel and had heard stories from their lineage of how, man, y'all's ancestors were a little bit crazy. They were just wandering around in circles for 40 years in the desert. Like, yo, what's up? But guess what they did every morning? They got manna. And it came down. It was sort of like their daily bread. So their manna they were able to eat. And if they didn't use their daily portion, it rotted. So every day they had to go back out and gather their daily apportionment of their sustainment and their nourishment to continue. And that is so deep. But if you don't understand that concept spiritually, you need to wake up. And I need to wake up. And I'm not acting like I have this conquered, because I don't, because I forget it so much. But man, that just checked me when you said that, because it's like, this is the day. And in this day, even in the model of prayer, Christ shows you, you better pray every day for your daily bread. And what does that mean? You are only getting it today, and I have it for you. You better, it's prepared, go collect it, because it's good. And if you don't use it today, you don't get another chance.
Absolutely.
And if he modeled that prayer, and he modeled that through stories with his nation, I promise you, it's real. Yeah. There are things that you blow by every day that could be life-changing.
Absolutely.
And it simply takes a posture of like, God, I'm ready for it.
Yes.
What you got? Give me that tailor-made suit, because I know it's good and I know it's coming.
Yes.
And if you don't ask, it won't be given to you. Yeah. If you don't seek, you won't find. Yeah. And that's not just a holistic seeking for salvation. I think that's a daily pursuit in this journey of following Jesus, that he has modeled that. And that is, man, that's a powerful thought. So no, of course I would never knock you on the suit thing, but that's where my mind sort of like played leapfrog into those passages, because he showed the story with his nation. And then he comes on the scene literally onto earth and models this perfect prayer that everyone of all nationalities in the faith have prayed the Lord's Prayer, regardless of your denomination. But have you actually ever sat with that and wondered, what you talking about, Willis? Like, man, what you trying to say with that prayer? And he was saying, like, no, I got a daily bread.
Yeah.
And I've modeled it for you. You can read about it. And I told you this is the day. So vision's great. But what you got going on today? What are you doing?
Yes.
Man, and it's a both and. It's not an either or.
Absolutely.
In that daily harvesting and partaking in the bread he's prepared for you, it is all connected to his vision for you.
Yes. Yes.
And he's gracious and merciful to continue us down the path when we miss the things he's prepared.
Yes.
And he will continue to provide.
Yes.
But I don't think it's as good as it could be if we don't stay dialed into that.
Absolutely.
That was my little tangent for what it's worth.
No, man, that was good. That was good.
Appointment. Here's what I think on the flip side of appointment. And this is interesting. I just, like you're a lyricist. And I really value words, man. I tell you what, someone I have been listening to on repeat who is brilliant is like some of the raps of Jackie Hill Perry.
Ooh.
Her and Linnell Grant have been blowing me away with their lyricism. Like if you unpack and listen to what they do, so they're female Christian rap artists, and Jackie Hill Perry is, she's a savage with her words, and it's so deep. But I just appreciate that words have meaning.
Yes.
And this is something that for a long time, quite a while, and this is just a Josh thing. It's not, I'm not saying that you shouldn't use this word, do your thing, but this is something that I thought about and was pressed onto me that I didn't want to say. I don't use the word disappointment personally. And here's why. Because literally to me, just breaking that down, if I tell someone that either they, like a person, a place, a thing, an idea, like any object or any noun,
Yeah.
that I'm disappointed because of it, in my heart one day, I was just like, I'm now giving that thing the power to appoint me.
Mm.
Because if it can disappoint me, it has the power of appointment over me. And that might sound crazy. And y'all might be like, man, you went off the deep end on that. You way overthinking things. Rock on. I don't care. But that's, I'm trying to be thoughtful on, and I've actually shared that with my wife and with my little girls. And I don't tell them they shouldn't say it. I just said, daddy doesn't say the word disappointed. I will never be disappointed in you for sure. I might be upset at you. I might absolutely tell you that you made the wrong decision. I'm angry or you chose poorly, but I will never look at them and say, you have disappointed me, because I said, you or no other human has the power to appoint anything in my life. That's God. And that sounds crazy. Maybe.
No, I get it.
But I think it's interesting to think about what we say and what it means and the words we use and how are we crafting those to message actually what's appointing us. And as it ties to like when and where is this vision and revealed, the timing, we already talked about the relationship and the posture and who it's coming from, that voice. I just think that's, for me, that was pressed onto me several years ago. For some reason, it popped. And man, you know the story. It has a lot to do with, maybe too much investment in who my earthly father was.
Yeah.
And then one day, and that's actually where it came from. One day someone was like, man, did that disappoint you? And they were talking in relation to my dad and him taking his own life and how close we were. And before I responded, I was like, I don't know how to respond to that. And I prayed over that word. And that's just sort of how it came to me. And God was like, oh, that disappoints you. Your earthly dad never appointed you. Of course you loved him. But I've got you. I'm your dad now. I always have been. So for me, it was such a personal, I guess you could say almost revelation of that term to me.
Yeah.
Personally, personalized. And I'm not saying I haven't done a Bible search to see if God or anyone spiritual ever used disappointment. So, I mean, y'all nerds are probably going to go out there, if you're even listening, and just show me where I'm so wrong. Okay. That's fine.
We know your heart, brother. We know your heart.
Yeah. So I think it's just really important thinking about that fullness of time.
Yeah.
Like you said, your daily apportionment in that journey.
Yes.
And then the things you say and do, like use those words, craft them thoughtfully because they mean something.
Yes.
And they message something.
Yes.
Especially with these little ears we got running around, man.
What?
Yo.
Are you kidding me? And at the ages where they are now, man, they are listening and picking up everything. There used to be a point you could say things and contextually they wouldn't understand it. Now, oh gosh, they're playing it back to you.
My 6-year-old will start correcting me on things that I say, but then she'll just start talking to me in Norwegian because she knows I can't speak Norse. And she's so fluent. And she'll just start. She looked at me the other day. She got like pissed off at me, and she said, "Nei, papa," and like went off. And I'm like, "You're scolding me in Norwegian." And I said, "Baby, I'm so proud you speak Norwegian, but when I can tell you're mad, it's only in a language I can understand because that's disrespectful." I was like, "Yo, I just got owned by a 6-year-old. I'm confident, yo." You punk. Yeah. God.
Oh gosh. That's hilarious.
Hey, Disneyland in Paris, you're gonna see that the reunion of the Hill and Morano family this summer.
I can't wait.
It's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. All right. But I love that you talked about in that last point on appointment, and you were talking about just like sort of that tension of knowing that there's things in the future, but there's things now. It's almost like you dialed this up perfectly. And I promise you, this wasn't rehearsed or planned. We're just sort of flowing with it, even though I shared the overall thoughts, but the response. So, what do you do when you see it or when that vision's revealed? And I'm going to read a few things. And really, the context of this that I'm going to land on is, I think, Paul's posture. So, yeah, we're going to talk about this for a second. So, in James 1:22, a very simple, common verse, I would say, says, "Be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves." So I think what you do when you see it is like, you got to do something about it. When you receive that vision and word, sure, you got to act. But I want to listen to these verses from Paul and then just get your thoughts on them. So in Philippians 4:11-13, it's the first one. And it says, Not that I'm speaking of being in need, for I've learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low. I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I've learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. And then in Philippians 3:12-14, he talks about, not that I have already obtained this or am already perfect, but I press on to make it my own, because Christ Jesus has made me his own. Brothers, I don't consider that I have made it my own, but one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind and straining forward to what lies ahead, press on toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus. And I read that first one in chapter 4 before the one in chapter 3, because in chapter 4, he's talking about contentment in a current state. And in chapter 3, he's talking about pressing in almost like this. I view it honestly almost as like a dissatisfaction with his current position. And he held both of these really, I think, in the same breath. So it almost juxtaposes contentment and satisfaction along his own transformation and pursuit of God's vision for his life. Because Paul, I mean, Chris said this the other day too. Paul, out of almost anyone you can read about, knew his vision from God and for himself. And he articulated it really well. So, with that response and that mindset, what are your thoughts on those?
It's funny. You set me up a little bit because I was going to say something. I think I'm still going to say it.
Say it anyway,
And
man.
I
Do your
probably will
thing.
get massacred by all the deep, deep spiritual leaders.
We
You
already in
know,
there. We're already
the
swimming in those waters.
you know, the Bible's interesting to me. And I think there is a lot that's on the pages, but I think there's a whole lot that wasn't documented. And
Mm-hmm.
don't get me wrong, I absolutely think God's word is perfect. I
Right.
think what he has given us is complete. That's not what I'm saying at all.
Right.
Yet, I do believe there were responses and probably things said by some of these very great religious leaders that are in scripture that we'll never know until we all get to heaven. And as
Or maybe
much as
never
I
at
would
all.
love, right, or never at all. You're right.
Who
So
knows?
I'm going to put myself in that bucket and say my response isn't always positive, and I don't believe everyone's response is always positive.
Mm-hmm.
As much
Yeah.
as we want to think we've gotten a word from God and we have clarity and we have the direction,
Right.
sometimes it's a Jonah experience. It's
Ooh.
like, you want me to do what? This is the plan you have for me? Can I take door B? Like I just feel oftentimes we talk about the decisions that we make that align. I hate to say it this way, that align with our will. And we're like, yes,
Mm-hmm.
this is the will of God. This is exactly what I thought, great. But there's some doors and some visions and direction that sometimes has looks nothing like what we anticipated or what we would really want out of the
Right.
situation. And I think for me, I have learned and I'm learning. Let me please place myself in a position I'm still a student of
Mm-hmm.
kind of like Mary. When Mary heard that she was going to have the baby, right, she hid it in her heart. And that's just the best thing I can tell you of how I've learned to deal with. It is easy to accept the things that I want God to do that I've already decided that I also want to do. It's
Right.
not as easy to always accept the things that necessarily aren't the things that I want. The thorn in Paul's side, right? He wanted the thorn to be removed, but God's like, no, 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 my grace is sufficient. So I think there's this constant ebb and flow of the response. I don't know if it's always I'm not excited or I am excited. I think it just depends. It depends on what the situation is. It depends on where I am in that moment. When I mean in that moment, meaning am I at a place, and I will tell you this, this is where I feel like most of the time when I get the response is
Mm-hmm.
I'm exhausted, Josh. I'm to the point that I have toiled on my head enough
Right.
that now it's like, whatever your will, let it be done.
Right.
Because I've been fighting and struggling with what direction he's going to take it, what's going to happen, what is the
Right.
outcome going to be. And then finally I get it or he shows it to me. And at that point, man, I'm just kind of like, I'm tired. Like spiritually, I am exhausted. But
Mm-hmm.
there are some times that even when I get it and I'm spiritually exhausted, it is not what I want. I was going to use the word that you just said you don't use anymore, but I'll just say
Man,
it didn't
no, I got you. No,
it didn't meet my expectation. How about that?
that's
It
just a
didn't.
Joshism, man.
I
Disappointment.
know,
Say it
no,
if you need
but I
to.
like it. Look, we learn from each other, brother. We learn from each
Yeah,
other.
that we do.
But yeah,
You're always
that's
learning. I will say that. Yeah. That was a very humble way to say, like, you do have a lot that you have learned, but of course you're a lifelong learner. That's a cliche thing that people say, but it's so true.
yeah.
Your
Anyway,
humility,
that
your
was
humility is really good on that. Oh, and I will say this too, because this is the verse that came to my mind as you were saying that. Oh, the depth of the riches of
yeah,
the wisdom and knowledge of God.
yeah,
How unsearchable are his judgments, and his ways are past finding out. So you can exhaust every earthly human assumption, assertion, pursuit with the gifts that he's given your body.
yeah,
But sometimes it's not even a matter of like, oh, I need more of God so that I can understand this. You will never, I will never, and he will never let us understand him fully
yeah.
because
Can you?
he is, we can use words like he is omniscient, he is all knowing. We don't have that capacity. We never will. That desire is what drove Satan out of heaven when he was Lucifer, son of the morning. Like, read your Bible, is what I'm trying to tell you. Because you can see this time and again where people think they can ascend to be like the Most High. He's like, man, you're so ignorant in this that I'm just going to confuse you.
Yeah,
And I'm just going to muddy the waters for you just to show you how impotent you are.
yeah,
And I'm not saying with or without me. I'm just saying, generally speaking, you
yeah,
are nothing in comparison to God. And that's not a belittling or a thing to like make people feel like, oh man, we're never going to get there. No, because he loves us so deeply.
yes,
But I think when he shows vision and direction that he has just so beautifully and carefully crafted for our lives, the best response is to go like, maybe I will never understand this. And I'm good with that because that's so deep and rich and beyond my understanding anyway that I just trust you with it because I've seen your storybook. I've seen your track record. You've shown it to me on the pages of history and actually in my own heart and life that I can trust you. And maybe that's not everyone's story, but I know for Fred and me that it is because we've shared some of these stories. And that's why, man, you can debate philosophy and theology and blah, blah, blah. People will do that all day long. But it's really tough to tell someone their story ain't their story.
yeah,
And I'm telling you right now, like, that's honest. Yeah, it's tough. We don't always accept that vision and that revelation the way we should.
ah,
But it is more comforting to know that it is perfect if it's from
yes,
him.
ooh,
And it is past me finding out.
yes,
I'm
yes,
actually dumb enough to know that. So I get that one. That one's probably the easier one for me to get. But yeah,
oh,
I love that sort of juxtaposition or that balance. It's almost like the seesaw that was perfectly balanced. Or maybe not perfectly, but in my mind, it's well balanced for Paul
yeah,
of contentment and satisfaction
yeah,
aren't the same word to me. Because if they
yes,
were the same word, they would be the same word in the dictionary. And I
yeah,
actually think they hold a different posture spiritually to Paul.
yeah, yeah,
I don't think Paul was satisfied with where he was
right,
because he was like at press. That's the
right,
way I read it anyway.
yeah,
But he said, I've learned in every state I'm in to be content.
yeah,
And that's the same man. So it's just, I think contentment is a piece that you can't really, you can't describe it. It does surpass all understanding. But then the pressing, the initiative, the drive, the never ever quit mindset and heart of Paul lived in that same body and lived in that same spirit. So I think maybe that's encouraging to some people because I've struggled with that. And then when it landed on me that way one day, I was like, I can be both and it's cool. And
right,
it's actually different words.
right, right.
Yeah.
That's
So
good stuff, man.
the challenge, we're going to sort of start landing the plane on this one. The resistance that you might face, the vision. Oof. And there's two passages. One I'll read that I sort of was looking into, and I would encourage everybody to like read the surrounding verses. I'm just going to give you the context, but it's in Nehemiah chapter 4, verse 17, and go read the story. So I'm not taking it out of context, but I am just sniping one so that I don't read the whole passage to you for sake of time. But Nehemiah is talking about some work that they were doing, building a wall, and there was a lot of opposition. And he's talking about, just picture this, he's talking about the people that are working. He goes, those who carried burdens were loaded in such a way that each labored on the work with one hand and held his weapon with the other. And in this one, I really like this because Chris shared this during our episode on Off the Hinges about how he thinks about vision. And he shared this passage in Matthew 28. But this passage says, now the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain to which Jesus had directed them. And when they saw him, they worshipped him. But some doubted. And Jesus came and said to them, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age. And man, that's as a leader, and that's the way Chris framed it. The resistance you'll face, whether it's in Nehemiah, people working together from like the trenches perspective of like, it's tough, it's a grind. We're always fighting off other people and trying to do this hard work, and it's thankless and it's exhausting. And then as the leader, as Christ, you just resurrected yourself from the dead and took power over sin in the grave. And now there's 11 disciples because one of them betrayed Jesus, right? So there goes Judas. So now we're down to these 11 from the 12. I mean, little things the Bible don't miss it. It's just a fact. It doesn't contradict itself. And it goes, some of them doubted. And you're like, man, y'all crazy. So are we. So with this challenge, the doubt, the resistance of pursuing this vision that maybe we do or don't even understand yet, how does that strike a chord with you, man? Because to me, that sinks in deep.
Ooh, good Lord. I feel like the story of my life, right? Immediately I think of two sayings, and I think one is scriptural. I don't even know. So go ahead and laugh at me. What is it? To whom much is given, much is required. And if you want to go real secular, I think about Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility.
Right.
And I am learning to accept, and I must say, my wife has been the greatest cheerleader and advocate of reminding me of my gifts. I think sometimes we don't think of the things that we do because we just do them as gifts.
Right.
And the constant reminder that I am blessed with many different skills equates to sometimes the struggle that comes along with it. In trying to be light in sometimes very dark places when I would just prefer to be in the light places,
Right.
to avoid conflict any point at any time that I want to, yet I'm constantly being challenged with environments that could be very contentious and difficult, but somehow I'm able to be in those environments and continue to what the world would say succeed, whatever that means.
Right.
But also just in my faith, right? Because back to my earlier point, I have attempted, and I'll say that, or I try, to live a life that I believe is worthy of the calling on my life. I also understand that the opposition is great, and it can sometimes become overwhelming. To a point where, we were joking a little bit, but hey, let's also be truthful in saying sometimes we're like, we're ready to go. Like, hey, if Jesus wants to come back, I'm all good. Like, I've got nothing else to prove. I'm good. Right.
Yeah.
But you understand, and here I'm going to totally flip it and go, but I also understand, right, that opposition is not always there, being derived from Satan. Some of it is absolutely strengthening, developing, maturing me as a person. So as I know what the vision is, and again, that's what I think is so, I'll use your word gnarly, which I love when you say that, about God, is that he will show you this vision, but he will never show you all that you have to go through to get there. Because
Mm-mm.
if you knew what you had to endure in order to get there, you wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Just being honest, right? You wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
So
Mm-mm.
for me, it's the daily walk. It goes back to what we were talking about before, the appointed time. The more that I focus on the appointed time, meaning today, and try as hard as I can not to focus on the future or what I think is going to get me to that vision of what I saw, helps me to remain grateful and thankful for where I am in this moment, because I
Mm-hmm.
can easily become overwhelmed in thinking, how are you going to make, Mary's response was, again, even when she heard about how she's going to have this, the conceptual birth, right? It's like, how shall this be? Like, she was worried and concerned about something that God had already worked out. Probably she was already pregnant in that moment, to be totally honest. She's
Yeah.
worried about trying to figure out how it's going to be done, and it's already done. And guess what, Josh? For most of the things in our lives, they're already done, bruh. They're already
Man.
done. We're sitting here toiling in our minds, thinking about what it's going to take to get there. And for many people, it's a financial thing. It could be a network thing. It could be a physical thing. And we're thinking about all the resistance that we're going to have when in actuality, it's already done. And I love what you said in the beginning. If he hadn't showed you the vision, rest assured it wouldn't have been something that he would have been able to do. So know that because a vision exists, it's already done.
All
It's
right.
already done. So it's
Yo,
something
when
about,
you say that, I gotta tell you this. When you say that, I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at a thought that just popped into my head. When you said it's already done and all these things, I just got this image in my mind, and maybe it's because these sort of conversations were happening when I was younger. I had different uncles that grew up in different denominations. One was a Baptist, one was a Presbyterian, and they used to have so many like heated debates sometimes about predestination.
yeah,
And oh man, like so when you said it's already done, I was like, I can already hear the different circles of religiosity and different denominations that are just jumping on bandwagons of their own. That's we love it. Bring it. We don't care, man. Like we've grown up around a lot of denominations with a lot of these.
absolutely.
Like I actually probably have heard not all of it, but most of it. But when I heard you say it's already done, I could just hear someone already refuting that from like the Baptist or the Pentecostal or the Presbyterian. Yo, anyway, sorry, continue. That had me
No, no,
laughing
no,
though.
no. Hey,
That's how it is.
whatever works for you. I know what I believe. I think, what's that scripture? For what if some shall not believe? Shall the unbelief make the faith of God of no effect? God forbid, let God be true and
Yeah,
every man a liar. So look,
exactly.
whatever you believe,
Hey man, that is a I don't want to mess this up, but I want to like pick this up and drop it. Like, let God be true and everyone a liar. I'm cool with that one. Me
works for
too.
me.
Me too. Me a liar too. Whatever. Yeah, it's so true though.
Yeah, man.
That's so
I'll
good.
stop there.
No, it's. I mean, we've all faced resistance, and when it comes to like the challenges of doubt
Yeah,
and toil and exhaustion, I'm going to unpack this real for a second because I've talked with some good people, and I've actually talked with one of my uncles who was his name's Daniel Reeder, and man, Daniel's such a good man. He's a good man. He lives like outskirts of Charlotte, so like beyond Matthews area.
yeah,
And he used to work. I think it was a place. I don't know if they're still there. If he's still there, but it used to be called like a Brook Sales, or it was like a farming equipment place way out there on the outskirts. Like just a good country boy. Grew up in the Charlotte area. Been there his whole life. Like loves God. Such a good father. Man, he's fantastic. So him and my dad were super close. And I've talked with Daniel a lot about different stuff after dad passed away. And we've had some honest talks. And I remember last time that I think last time I physically saw Daniel, like we always have a good time and catch up. But then our conversation always go to like spiritual things. It's who we are. We love each other and we encourage each other and challenge each other. And it's sort of like when you and I connect, man, it's just
yeah,
natural.
yeah.
And he was like, hey, man, he's like, I got a question. He said, because, and I appreciate it, Daniel. I love you, man. I don't know if maybe I'll send this to you so you can check out what Fred and I are doing and you can hear a tip of the hat to you because I really appreciated your humility in this question. So, my uncle, definitely older than me, he's seen me grow up and he came to me with an honest question. He was like, I have a question when it comes to just to death. He's like, because I know you've been exposed to a lot of it. So again, that mindset of he's not looking at age. He's just
Yeah.
literally, and I'm not even talking necessarily a spiritual perspective. He's just looking at exposure and experience to a thing that we all could grapple with. He's like,
Yeah.
you have seen this, not just experience it with your dad, but he's like, you've seen it
Yeah.
firsthand and
Yeah.
been exposed to a lot of it and seen people in their last moment. He's
Mhm.
like, ah. And I'm going to say this graciously and gently as I can, but I'm just going to be real with it. So I'm not trying to be offensive if you don't hold this perspective. I'm not saying I've cracked the code on this. This is just Josh's heart. You get it, whatever. And this was the conversation I had with Daniel. He goes, man, when it comes to death, I hear people saying that, oh, like for a believer, it's just, it's peaceful. And like, you know, it's like, oh, I see Jesus. And it's like, there's no fear in that moment because they're not afraid of death. He said, what do you think? He said, he said, I actually think that for me, my mind thinks that like death and actually entering into eternity the way we believe it as a follower of Jesus is the biggest act of faith because it's sort of like all the cards are revealed and you don't know. So
Yeah.
you are stepping into literally the abyss of the unknown of eternity
Yeah.
as we frame it.
Yeah.
And he said, and while there can be spiritual comfort, he said, I don't know if that's completely free of doubt.
Right.
And I said, I agree with you. I said, I agree with you. Because, and here's the thing, man, here's what I'll say. When it comes to the resistance you'll face, the doubt you'll face, and what I'm careful to not say in certain contexts to my daughter or to my children or to other people in general, if I'm trying to comfort them with difficulties. Because people go like, I had someone who was around my little girls and me, and they were sweet and they were trying to be encouraging because one of my girls was like, you know, they had met him and they're like, oh, tell me about your family. And one of my girls told him that, you know, oh, well, daddy's dad died and, you know, he's not alive anymore. And they said, oh, well, he's probably up in heaven just smiling down on you right now and so proud of you. And then later that day, because my kids are perceptive, man, especially the older one. My oldest one asked me, Aria asked me, it was like a year ago or something. She goes, Dad, do you think your dad's looking down on you in heaven right now and smiling? And I said, baby, I don't know what goes on in heaven. And I said, that's a nice thought.
Yeah.
But I said, what I don't want to do, and I was just honest with her. And it's not that I'm trying to play some realist approach.
Yeah.
I said, I don't know. And I don't think God ever painted a picture that told me that this is exactly what your ancestors are doing or not doing. I said, there's a lot that we can read about heaven, but there's a lot I don't know about it. And I said, I don't know what that experience is like to be absent in the body and be present with the Lord. I believe it because he said it, but it takes faith. And I haven't experienced it. So that vision and that hope of the future, and this is where it all lands on me. Like the whole process of faith and following Jesus is putting hope in a vision he has cast for us. But have I physically ever met the body of Christ on earth? No. Do I believe it? Yes. And I have a lot of stories that can tell you why. I believe it to my heart, down to the quick of me. But can I explain it? No, not all of it. Is there doubt at times? Absolutely. Is it sometimes like, does the enemy use that to crop up fear or anxieties or questions that probably shouldn't be there? Yeah. And like I said before, what do? I take them to God and go like, I don't know what's up, but this is like, I'm riddled with doubt and questions, and he welcomes that. But I would encourage people that I know Fred and I, like, we ain't got it all figured out.
No.
And speaking personally, that conversation with Daniel was so healthy, man, because this is a man who has followed God for a lot of years. And he knows God's word and he applies it and he studies. And he said, I just don't know if I believe those notions that we put in people's minds because I can't find that anywhere biblically. And I actually see that in the presence of God, even people doubted. And he referenced things like what we've been discussing. He said, so when you're about to re-enter into his presence, who's to say that in your unperfected human form, there won't be lacings of doubt? And I said, I agree, man. Because I said, my experience with death is like, not everyone was like freaking out. I'm not saying it's like this crazy experience, but I haven't experienced like the flip side of what maybe that sounds like the fairy tale experience either. I said, I can't really dip into eternity and ask these people what it was like. So I can't tell you. I can't tell you that. I would caution people not to factually state, especially to little ears or young people, stuff that you actually haven't pursued and found out and that God hasn't shown you. And also, it's okay if you're feeling tired and worn down and you've got a lot of doubt, I don't want you to feel that way. I don't want to feel that way, but it's God shows us stories of that doubt, I think, as an encouragement and an example that it's not isolated to us. It's a part of the human condition, and it's okay to have that.
Yeah.
And it's a part of who we are.
Yeah.
And hopefully, the response in all of that is turning to Him
Yeah.
and asking Him what's going on. But
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It was like in that conversation with Daniel, that was about as truncated off the cuff as I could make it. But it was,
Yeah.
man, it hit me and it caught me off guard a little bit. And I just had to be honest and go like, yeah, I sort of have to agree with you because I just don't know.
Right.
So I don't know your thoughts on that sort of thing, but that's where it landed on me.
Ooh. I mean, you know, my mom passed, transitioned about a year,
Yeah.
a little bit more than a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I will agree with you. I think I had a lot of questions on what she would be doing, um, or what it would be like. Is it better? I mean, I know it's better than the situation that she was in. That I know for sure.
Yeah.
Selfishly, is it better for me? I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that's always something that you struggle with a little bit because you clearly understand, um, well, you know that her presence with God is much more, um, a safer place than her, or for me, for her being here still on earth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know, man. You've opened Pandora's box a little bit. I will say, and again, I can't prove it. I don't know what else to say. And we've talked about this a little bit off camera.
Yeah. Just
Uh,
speak your heart, man.
I
That's
feel
all I'm doing.
I feel like maybe they're not sitting there smiling, but I do believe they know what we're doing
Hmm.
because there are moments, um, in very still moments and in a quiet voice, I am reassured of her presence. I
Yeah.
am, I and it comes across in different ways. It's not
Mm-hmm.
always a voice. It could be a smell. It could be someone. This is the one that's got me a lot lately, and I am not going there. You're not going to take me here, man. But I will share this. It is often in the way another person says something the way that she used to say it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now it just really hits me in a different way. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh my God, that is my mother. Like that's exactly what she would have said in this
Yeah.
moment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have I don't know, I have a very different perspective watching my mother transition. Um, was not what I thought it would be like. And I do believe to some degree that there is a struggle that goes
Mm-hmm.
on with the person. I personally saw that with
Yeah.
her a little bit. I think there were absolutely moments where she wanted to stay.
Mm-hmm.
And I could definitely see moments, and she even verbalized it, you know, let me go. Like,
Yeah.
it's okay. Let me go.
Mm-hmm.
And, oh, wow, man. Mm. Um,
Yeah, man.
yeah. Um, I feel a presence. I still,
Absolutely.
and, I would definitely say that I feel it often in places where she used to go often. And I know this is, I can make us laugh now. She loved Costco. She loved Sam's.
What, them free samples? Would you go there for lunch?
No, man, she loved, look, she loved just going to see what new thing they had.
Oh man.
So I find myself now, I think I may have mentioned this to you. We cooked a lot together.
Yeah.
And I'm not straying too far from the question, hopefully, but the whole point is
No, you take it where you're going. You're good.
in those experiences, in the cooking, in visiting some of the big box stores,
Mm-hmm.
um, I absolutely feel her present. There is a peace, there is a calmness that I get in those moments where there is a feeling that she is somewhere. I can't explain it. So I don't know if those are moments that God allows that heaven and earth to somewhat get really, really close. And we get those moments to connect with our loved ones. I,
Yeah.
I don't know. I know my experience, so I won't tell. It's hard for me to tell someone no, that's not real, or
Yeah.
no, they're not smiling down on you. I don't know. I don't know.
Exactly.
I don't know. I just know in the moments of the past little less than 18 months, those moments that I have had that were refreshing were
Hmm.
those moments that I felt her presence. Whatever that means, I can't explain it. I think I hate to
Right.
say it, you have to have gone through it or go through it to understand what that means. But that is what's giving me peace
Right.
since. And that's
Yeah.
what I look for every day. And sometimes that feeling is stronger than others. I would definitely say that. There's some moments I'm like, man, I haven't felt that in a while. And then something will happen. Someone will say something, some card or something will come across my path that will remind me of her.
I'm going to speak to men for a second. Everyone can take maybe some comfort and some encouragement from this, but especially for men. And there's a lot of things and a lot of people that are, I think, starting to explore this idea for men as well. But the shortest verse in the Bible is the most powerful one to me because it speaks, I think, as a man to my heart so quickly. And you know where I'm going with this, man. So John 11:35, Jesus wept. And good Lord, I think, and I have my girls, and this isn't a badge of honor or pride, I'm just being real.
Yeah.
My girls and my wife have seen me weep.
Yeah.
My brothers in Christ and my friends have seen me weep. I could care less. And this isn't me just trying to follow the social waves or wind blows or whatever. This is really in the deepest heart of hearts of mine that I've gotten from my heavenly dad. So this isn't, man, this affirmation from God and this vision from God and this word from him and his appointment, human concurrence or laughs at this, don't shake it.
Yeah.
The healing quality, like yes, a merry heart is good like a medicine, but the healing quality of being able to just like pour your heart out and weep and feel sorrow. It says Jesus was a man of sorrows. And the beautiful thing is like he was 100% of his nature 100% of the time.
Yeah.
So when you think of he was all knowing, all powerful, a man of sorrows, the lion, the lamb, you just go read everything. When he came, he was wonderful counselor, mighty God, everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Everything about his character trait. It's almost like if he took an MBTI personality type indicator test, who was Jesus? He was all of them all the time. He could
Yeah.
be everything because he is everything. And so when you think of that God of the universe in human form, and he wept. And as a man, I love that you can enter those spaces. And yeah, I'm glad that you took it there because that is part of the conversation with vision. And when you experience things of doubt and exhaustion and maybe having some of those things opened up to you in those experiences, like you said, if he showed you everything you were going to have along that journey, man, um, it, it, it would cause you maybe not to start stepping. But all I can tell you is, it is so healing. And I'm not going to extend this into some like deep dive psychology thing or whatever. There's a lot of things you can listen to. Maybe we'll get into this some other day. And I'm happy to. It's not that we're uninformed or ill-informed on these things. But just generally speaking, it is so healing, especially for men, to not just view yourself as this hardened provider and protector.
Yeah.
And to actually dip into all of the emotions.
Yeah.
God gave the capacity for every human emotion and characteristic fully to both men and women. And it is your choice whether you embrace the gift of that.
Yep.
So the empathy, the compassion, the sorrow, the grief, those things are things that I think you actually believe you need to learn how to feel them and deal with them.
Yeah.
With vision, we talked about these things, but just stay connected.
Yeah.
Stay ready. Trust the timing. And you got to hold fast and stand firm and keep on pressing, right? Like reflecting on Samuel, please go read that story of Samuel. It's powerful, but he recognized the call and he responded. So that posture was really important. And those relationships in his life were important. And then Paul, contentment, satisfaction, like where does that balance for you? So go read how Paul navigated some of these things. There's a lot of wisdom to unpack. And then ultimately, the perfect picture was Jesus in the fullness of time, both from the vision that he gave to his nation that he eventually manifested when he came the first time to earth. And then it became reality. And people still doubted and not everybody accepted, but it was there. And it's coming again. So what do you do with that? What do you do with him? What do you do with that vision he's cast for us? And it's going to be in the Father's perfect timing. So you can't wrestle and grapple with the fact that you will never know that. But when it happens, it's happening. So what you doing in the meantime? And I think that's a really healthy encouragement and challenge with aligning your personal vision to that eternal vision. So over to you to sort of mic drop us out of this episode, my man. What you got?
Man, that was a beautiful summary. I don't have a lot, but I will add, stay humble. Stay humble. Trust the process. Know that you will get to the other side. Even if you're on a shipwrecked boat, you will get to the other side. If he showed it to you, it must come to pass. That is what I hold on to, and that's what I encourage all of you to hold on to. Hold on to the vision, because when you're going through it, know there is an end.
Man,
that's it, man.
That's so good. And I encourage you, not spiritually, but practically, if you don't have a personal vision, a family vision for an organization, an organizational vision, you need one. Hey, we're so glad you joined us today. We hope you enjoyed this. We hope it shed a little bit of light, not from our wisdom, but from the source of everything good. And it's a crazy world out there. We're going to see you in 2 weeks, but take care of yourselves because y'all be losing your minds. So, hey, we're out of here. We love you. We're glad we joined. Fred, I love you, man.
Love
I'm
you
proud
too.
of you.
Same here,
Time
man.
to get back to good. Get out of here.
All right. Peace out.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Back to Good. Don't forget to follow Foundational Coaching on your favorite social media platforms. Fred and I are honored to be a part of your story today. We hope this conversation has helped bring your head, hands, and heart back to good.